All right, Shabbat Shalom. We are live at Divine. It's a beautiful Shabbat day today. Hope everyone's being blessed. And speaking of blessed, Jonathan, you go ahead and open us up in prayer, brother.
Will do. All right, let's pray, guys. Dear Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for all that you're doing in our lives. Thank you for the Shabbat, the day where you've asked us to come together, to congregate, gather, assemble, all those good words to read the good word. I just thank you so much for all the books we're going to be reading and the chapters, and I just pray that we're seeking wisdom, that we're opening our minds and our hearts and our ears to hear what you have to say through the word. And I just pray that we are more and more willing to read, understand, and share out publicly, share out privately, share out in our local groups and our families and all the opportunities that we have in our world to share the gospel of the kingdom, that we do that as often and as best as we can. I pray things in your son's holy name, Yeshua. Amen.
Amen. And Shabbat Shalom there, Robert Daniels, Beetlejuice, Marcia, and Miss Cleveland, and Tyler Porter. Good to see you guys. All right, so we're going to be in John chapter 5 today. Not 1, not 2, not 3, but John chapter 5. And then we'll be heading over to 1 Samuel and finishing out 1 Samuel today in chapter 31. All right.
We're not starting in Genesis?
Nope.
Huh?
Nope.
Oh.
Is John chapter 5, right?
Yep.
All right.
Shall we read?
This one.
All right. After these things, there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now there is in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool, which is called in Hebrew Bethesda, I guess, having 5 porticos. In these lay a multitude of those who were sick, blind, lame, and withered, waiting for the moving of the waters. For an angel of the Lord went down at certain seasons into the pool and stirred up the water. Whoever then first, after the stirring up of the water, stepped in was made well from whatever disease with which he was afflicted. A man was there who had been ill for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he already had been a long time in that condition, he said to him, "Do you wish to get well?" The sick man answered him, "Sir, I have no man to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up, but while I am coming, another steps down before me." Jesus said to him, "Get up, pick up your pallet and walk." Immediately the man became well and picked up his pallet and began to walk. Now it was the Sabbath on that day. So the Jews were saying to the man who was cured, "It is the Sabbath, and it is not permissible for you to carry your pallet." But he answered them, "He who made me well was the one who said to me, 'Pick up your pallet and walk.'" They asked him, "Who is the man who said to you, 'Pick up your pallet and walk'?" But the man who was healed did not know who it was, for Jesus had slipped away while there was a crowd in that place. Afterwards, Jesus found him in the temple and said to him, "Behold, you have become well. Do not sin anymore, so that nothing worse happens to you." The man went away and told the Jews that it was Jesus who had made him well. For this reason, the Jews were persecuting Jesus, because he was doing these things on the Sabbath. But he answered them, "My Father is working until now, and I myself am working." For this reason, therefore, the Jews were seeking all the more to kill him, because he not only was breaking the Sabbath, but also was calling God his own Father, making himself equal with God. Therefore, Jesus answered and was saying to them, "Truly, truly, I say to you, the Son can do nothing of himself unless it is something he sees the Father doing. For whatever the Father does, these things the Son also does in like manner. For the Father loves the Son and shows him all things that he himself is doing. And the Father will show him greater works than these, so that you will marvel. For just as the Father raises the dead and gives them life, even so the Son also gives life to whom he wishes. For not even the Father judges anyone, but he has given all judgment to the Son, so that all will honor the Son, even as they honor the Father. He who does not honor the Son does not honor the Father who sent him. Truly, truly, I say to you, he who hears my word and believes him who sent me has eternal life, and does not come into judgment, but is passed out of death into life. Truly, truly, I say to you, an hour is coming, and now is, when the dead will hear the voice of the Son of God, and those who hear will live. For just as the Father has life in himself, even so he gave to the Son also to have life in himself. And he gave him authority to execute judgment, because he is the Son of Man. Do not marvel at this, For an hour is coming in which all who are in the tombs will hear his voice and will come forth. Those who did good deeds to a resurrection of life, those who committed the evil deeds to a resurrection of judgment. I could do nothing on my own initiative. As I hear, I judge, and my judgment is just, because I do not seek my own will, but the will of him who sent me. If I alone testify about myself, my testimony is not true. There is another who testifies of me, and I know that the testimony which he gives about me is true. You have sent to John, and he has testified to the truth. But the testimony which I receive is not from man, but I say these things so that you may be saved. He was the lamp that was burning and was shining, and you were willing to rejoice for a while in his light. But the testimony which I have is greater than the testimony of John. For the works which the Father has given me to accomplish, the very works that I do, testify about me that the Father has sent me. And the Father who sent me, he has testified of me. You have neither heard his voice at any time nor seen his form. You do not have his word abiding in you, for you do not believe him who sent he sent. You search the scriptures because you think that in them you have eternal life. It is these that testify about me. And you are unwilling to come to me so that you may have life. I do not receive glory from men, but I know you that you do not have the love of God in yourselves. I have come in my Father's name, and you do not receive me. If another comes in his own name, you will receive him. How can you believe when you receive glory from one another and do not seek the glory that is from the one and only God? Do not think that I will accuse you before the Father. The one who accuses you is Moses, in whom you have set your hope. For if you believe Moses, you would believe me, for he wrote about me. But if you do not believe his writings, how will you believe my words?
Thank you.
What's up, Ryan? All right, guys.
John 5.
John 5. Johnny 5, he's alive. Yeah, Robert Daniels says, isn't that crazy? Where else is there a reference of an angel stirring up water for healing?
Yeah, I think I'd always kind of wondered if that was just something that was made up, thought, their personal thought that an angel was stirring up the water, or was it an actual statement of that?
I was trying to look up Sheepgate, Sheepgate, and they said that pool used to be the cleansing pool before the sacrifices of the sheep, but I don't know if that's true. But it, in Nehemiah it talks about the Sheepgate, how they went and they fixed it.
Mm-hmm.
See, we got the Hernandez family. Shabbat shalom to you. See if I missed anybody. Robert's wife. Shabbat shalom. I think I've gotten everybody so far.
What feast do you think it was?
I don't.
One would be 3, right?
Well, so this was after the wedding feast, and whenever he made the water and the wine, and then he had the woman at the well.
Yeah, I was tracking. He went from Galilee and did the wedding with the wine and water, and he goes down to Jerusalem for Passover. And he goes back up, goes through Sturka or Cypher with the Samaritan woman, and goes back up into Canaan again. There's a second miracle. The first 2 miracles are in, they say it right, Canaan and Cana.
Cana, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and what's interesting is I think last time we talked about the harvest, and so we said, the harvest is in the spring. So then this would have been Passover, Pentecost time frame, if that's the case. If it's the fall, then you're looking at Sukkot. That's the third one that you'd have to all show up for. So either Sukkot, so it's either in the fall or the spring. I know that didn't actually help much, but I know last time everybody said that we get the harvest in the spring.
Do we know if this is chronological?
They should be.
Should be.
Yeah.
I think that's what it was. They're all, they're from birth to death is the gospel, so they should be in order.
What are the harvests that you get in the spring?
The wheat and the barley.
Those things are just starting.
Yeah.
That's why I said I'm still kind of playing with the idea that it's fall. When I talked about the harvest, that's when you bring in your first fruits of everything's in the fall. But it just depends. So I don't know if we get a direct answer on what this feast is, but we do know that it starts off with saying that, and there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. So again, it's that distinguishment for whatever reason, where the writer's not like, this is our feast, this is God's feast, this is the feast we're all doing, this is their feast, and then Jesus was also there during their feast. So I don't know why it spells it out that way, but that's the way we've been reading it so far.
See, it was one of the three that had to present themselves.
Right.
That's what you're saying?
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
All right, never mind. Got it now.
that's what I'm saying. It had to have been spring or fall because those either one at the end or the one at the beginning.
So we're getting comments right now about you being dressed up.
So
Yeah.
apparently I suck since I changed one thing and it's noticeable.
Yeah, you're not wearing the steel shirt right now. So
Did you get dressed up?
everybody else, Beetlejuice and everybody else who's slumming today, you're making them feel bad about themselves. And apparently Tyler is wearing fleece and slippers. So
He's fleecing the flock.
there he goes. The same here, fleece and slippers. Ha ha ha.
Yeah, you should get the word.
Yeah, Jonathan will be teaching today, so he's got his preacher man outfit on today. Try
And
to
got
look.
hard bottom shoes.
Even got hard bottom shoes on and everything. So if you missed that this morning, our anchor to truth that he will be speaking today. So
We'll see.
he's still trying to flesh it out. See, But anyway, go ahead.
Just looking up on Google Maps how long it takes to walk from Jerusalem to Cana. It's only a day and a half walk.
Yeah, a lot of his stuff
I
was
think
very
it's farther than that.
centralized. We look at it as okay, it was like Jacob and these guys and Abraham. They were walking, but Yeshua's a lot of his stuff was very like here to there and right back there and then back home. There's a lot of near-ish stuff. He didn't have any like long journeys except for when he was little. He went to Egypt.
Now I do think that they're giving you a time if you're like on a marching order type walk and you're just going.
Right.
He probably took a whole week maybe,
Mhm.
taking his time, stopping here, stopping there, getting
Right.
the spirit. I think.
Well, one of the things too that I'm still fleshing out myself is I was listening to a teaching of, and I don't know if this is absolute truth or not, but it was interesting, is that the person I was listening to was saying that the Pharisees' Sabbath was actually on a different day because they were following the not a Gregorian, what's the other calendar? Julian. They were influenced by the Julian calendar and everything that was taking place, I guess, with Rome and everything going on, and that their Sabbath actually fell on a Wednesday during the week. And so there was time. That's something that I'm gonna go back and flesh it. I don't want to say "Thus says the Lord" on any of this stuff, or but it was interesting because on some of these days, like when he goes and he does the healing, and they're mad at him for it being a Sabbath, the way this person was explaining was, but it wasn't the true Sabbath. And it's in the wording of how Yeshua says what he says. So I thought that was very interesting. So I thought I have to go back and flesh that one out and kind of really dig in and research that. But that would be interesting, though, if they were actually keeping. Hold on.
That's crazy. This is all.
Yeah,
There's no reason
it still picks up. Yeah.
Are you talking about in reference to 3 days rising towards the end of talking about it's been a while. Like the crucifixion happening on a Wednesday.
Did
It was
they
like-
change all that? That's what I'm saying.
Because you're talking about Wednesday Sabbaths, like 3 days.
Yeah, well, their Sabbath was the wrong Sabbath, though. So it wasn't the true Sabbath.
So when it says in here that it was a Sabbath, do we still go by that?
I don't know. That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. Don't get.
Oh, just
Hey, let
wondering.
me flesh it out some more. But what I'm saying is, it's interesting that doing some more research into this, that it may actually show, because we've talked about how some, it comes up in conversation. How do we know that Jesus wasn't keeping the same as them, and vice versa, and all this stuff? And so there's so much more evidence out there now through the Dead Sea Scrolls, through other writings, Josephus, and everything else, that Yeshua was more likely keeping the, like I would say 99.9% keeping the priestly calendar accurately. He wasn't keeping the feast days of someone else. He himself would have known this isn't right. So I'm not going to dishonor my father, because that would be, stepping outside of, by keeping a feast day on the wrong day. So if it's true that they were actually influenced at that time by the Julian calendar and by the governing body around them, that their Sabbath day could have been, it literally could have been on a Wednesday throughout the week. instead of where it is now. And so if that's the case, it kind of makes some sense too, because he says he goes into there and he heals the man with her hand. And he says, I'm about my father's work as my father. You know, there's a statement he makes in there about being about his father's work, saying, me and my father know when to work. We work on the days appropriate versus what you were saying. So anyway, I just thought that was interesting. Sometimes when we, and I'll flesh it out some more, we'll come back to this subject again, but it would be interesting, or it would change some dynamics of when we're reading about it. That's why when in the very beginning of verse 5, where it says, and there was a festival of the Yehuda, or, you know, the Jewish people. So it's not declaring again that this is a festival of Abba or Jehovah or Yahuwah. It's saying a festival of the Yahudim. So in that wording itself, again, we've come to the conclusion that it's more likely saying this was your festival, but this was not the festival of our Father. You know, being on the right day. So anyway, just thought I'd throw that out there.
I looked at some commentaries, and it was interesting. Every single commentary had a different festival. Some said Purim, some said unleavened bread, some said whatever. Wow, they're really far off from each other.
Right. Well, when it doesn't, you know, a lot of times when scripture's silent, I think we are best to stay silent on it as well. Just we can put our ideas or thoughts into it, but what does it say? It doesn't say either one. So we can just our best guess, our best idea. I said more than likely it was fall or spring, some one of those two, but I don't think we have any concrete evidence other than trying to go back and bounce all four gospels against each other and see what else was happening around these times, but we don't know what time gaps between them. You know, it's like, well, right before this was Passover. I didn't tell it that it wasn't 5 months later whenever he, you know, was at the pool. So
I think the person that I was listening to, and I don't want to give their name out yet just because I want to flesh this out some more, but they actually go in a chronologically go have a starting point, and they have a whole other view of when Christ actually died, how old he was when he died. I believe they said that they strongly believe that he was born in the springtime. You know, around the time that the sheep and everything would have been born. But this person actually they've actually went back and chronologically try to put all of this in the proper. So I'll go back and look at it some more, but that might give us some answers of what festival is actually taking place right now.
So I was kind of peering into 6. 6 says like after this, so it's like right after chapter 5, talking about they're going into Passover.
oh, chapter 6, you mean?
Yeah. Because chapter 6 refers back to chapter 5, saying after this, and then we're going right into Passover. I mean, then again, John, nothing. You didn't say time gap, but it is saying that after the events of chapter 5, it looks like we're going right into Passover.
Which is
Where do you see Passover at though? What verse?
Verse 4, chapter 6, verse 4.
that's why I kind of guessed it all, because then what's next, you know, you can't have spring and then spring again unless it was a whole year. So I said if this was fall time and they were bringing in the rest of the harvest, and then it was through the winter and started Passover again. But other than that, verse 6, which is different than chapter 6, verse 6, Jesus saw the man laying there and he said to him, do you want to be healed? What a crazy event, right?
Right.
You just been laying there next to this pool, and this dude, you know, to him it was just some dude, right? But to him, this is teacher Rabbi Yeshua, and he walks up and says, "Hey, do you want to be healed?" And you know, I think his answer is very real. You know, like we want to look at Bible people as everybody heard holy and felt holy, and you know, the man was like, "Oh, it's the Most High. Of course, I want to be healed. Thank you, Master." You know, and instead he was just, "Do you want to be healed, sir? I have no one to put me in the pool, so no. I mean, it'd be great, but it's not going to happen. So what do you want me to do about it?" And little does he know who he's talking to. And I think this echoes back to the same story with the woman at the well. Well, are you thirsty? Well, I got water making never work thirst again. Where's that water? Like, she doesn't know who she's talking. If you knew who you were asking this question, you wouldn't be asking this question. And the same thing with this guy. If you knew who was asking you this question, you wouldn't be asking this question. So it's just interesting to see, like, I think it's given us an indicator of like how the people reacted to Yeshua at the time, how who they thought he was, how they thought he was interacting with the world. He was just a teacher. He was just a guy. And so when he's asking him these questions that he has full capability, he's like, he could have healed the guy. Do you want to be healed? I could do that. But yet he's like seeing where that man's heart is at. He's seeing where their faith was at. You know, and I think there's an interesting they're trying to get some of the humanity of Yeshua and who he was walking around before he was full ascended, before he was full throwing miracles and casting demons out all over the place. He was just a man, and a lot of people still only saw him as that. They didn't even know to like. We all know in hindsight, oh, this is Jesus. He's awesome and he can do all things. To him, it was just a guy asking him, "Do you want to get healed?" Yeah, everybody's asking that question. Of course, it'd be great, but what do you want me to do about it?
Now, would he have been to go and present himself at the temple afterwards, like the lepers, or is that something different because it was leprosy? So see, it says later that he was at the temple. Would he give like a Thanksgiving offering or something because he healed him? I'm just wondering.
You talking about Jesus or
The man.
Oh yeah, the man probably
Mm-hmm.
because he was stuck there. Yeah, he hadn't been to temple in forever or done anything.
It says he found him at the temple.
Mhm.
Wow.
Well, depending on what his infirmity was, you do have to go to the priest and present yourself, because whatever it was that he was sick from, may have possibly made him unclean as well. So it's like now that he's whole, he can go present himself to the priest and go, and they can say, yeah, you're good.
That's what you're supposed to do, but
Right.
like the lepers, only one did that, right?
No, it says only one turn around and give thanks. The lepers more likely, if they knew it was good for them, they absolutely went to the priest because they were not be. They're like, hey, did you go to the priest? No, I don't care if you look whole, but you need to get looked at.
Yep.
So so for them, they absolutely would have went because that meant their ticket back into society and not being outcast. So
100%.
yeah.
Kyle in Mississippi.
Yeah, I think that's
Lost to Kyle.
considered. What?
There you go. Go ahead.
We lost you for a second. Go ahead, buddy.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's really cool. The anybody who had anything that made them to be considered unclean had to be inspected. And I think it's really, really cool who they had to be inspected by. I mean, let's be honest. It doesn't take a priest to look at someone to find out. Like this isn't a specialty job. It doesn't take much training to be able to know what to look for and what not to look for, right? So I just find it really awesome that it was a high priest. I think this is something that the Father had set up all along. Yes, it needed to be a priest because this is going to be yet another testimony to those that are in power when my son comes.
Mm.
All these people will have to be inspected, and they're going to be like, how are all these people who have these, all these ailments, all these illnesses, all these sicknesses, all these whatever, they're just being healed all over the place. What is going on? And like they can't deny it, even though they do. That's what's crazy. Like they absolutely have to just refuse what is plainly in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like they can't say we didn't know.
Mm.
So yeah, I think that's awesome.
I like it. I like it a lot.
I wanted to discuss verse 17 and 18 and 24. In 17 it says, but Jesus answered them, my Father is working until now, and I am working. And my note said, Jesus does not dispute with the Jews or Yeshua, you can say. Whether they are right to criticize the layman, he denies that they can criticize him because he is only doing what his Father does. The Jews understood him to be saying this since they accused him of making himself equal with God. And then verse 18, it says, this was why the Jews were seeking all the more to kill him, because not only was he breaking the Sabbath, but he was even calling God his own Father, making himself equal with God. So the back part of it, where it says making himself equal with God, Yeshua represented himself as one who had the same authority over the Sabbath as the author of the Sabbath, which was given not only at Sinai, but in the creation order itself. And then verse 24, where it says, truly, truly, I say to you, whoever hears my word and believes him who sent me has eternal life. He does not come into judgment, but has passed from death to life. And talking about eternal life, salvation is not only an object of hope for the future, but a present reality for the believer. Such a one has passed from death to life. And that's also something to think about.
Well, that was going back to the person I was listening to on their teaching on that there's a good possibility that the Jewish people at the time had a different Sabbath day. What it says in verse 17, that's what they brought up. It says, and Yeshua answered them, my Father works until now, and I work. Basically saying this isn't the Sabbath, so as we're going to continue to work and do. And now, would Yeshua heal somebody on the actual Sabbath? I think so, because it's all about life. You know, and so either way, whether this is they're keeping the actual Sabbath or not, it's, you know, you think about the time of a priest. Priest still has to be a priest. If you're elite, now I'm talking about the high priest, but a Levitical priest who's working the temple on Shabbat, they don't get the day off. They're still serving, they're still ministering, and they're still doing what God had called them to do. So either way, I don't have a problem with, of course, if Yeshua healing a man, if it's the actual Sabbath, or whether or not it was what they were keeping as the Sabbath.
Can you?
I would say like in today's terms, it's like a hospital, like an emergency, like all the medical personnel, doctors and nurses. It's not like you can say Tuesday at 1 o'clock, I'm having an emergency, you know, so, or Saturday or whatever. So, you know, it's Sabbath, you can't help me. You know, those people, they take an oath to help save and, you know, help people, help patients. And so that is that.
Yeah.
When you put it in, like, for example, for today's terms, it's not like you have a day off. So
What does your verse 9 and
9.
5, how does it read?
It says, and immediately the man became well, and he took up his bed and was walking. Now it was Sabbath on that day.
That's going to be, for me, hard to refute, because the author is telling you that it was the Sabbath. Not the Sabbath of the Jews, not a Jewish Sabbath. The author is saying it's the Sabbath. So then it's that's how I'm going to take it. You're going to need some pretty overwhelming evidence.
Well,
to say
that I can see it both ways, though, because right after that, when you read it in the Yehudim, therefore said to him who was healed, it is the Sabbath. It is not right for you to take up your bed. So the author writing this is given in lieu to this is getting ready to happen. He's already, because this is a story written from either gathering information or eyewitness. So because it is, if let's say it was the Jews' Sabbath, their Sabbath day, but not the right day, he's going to say, by the way, this guy was healed. It was on the Sabbath. But here comes these guys that are upset because this is their Sabbath. So
it seems
there's
weird that you would affirm the wrong.
I don't think they're affirming it. I think what he's giving context, because immediately the Yehudim, right after 9, the Yehudim show up and say to him who has been healed. So anyway, like I said, again, I'm going to flush that out some more and see if that lines up, but it'd be interesting to see how that plays out.
I have a question about 18.
Sure.
So it says making himself equal with God. Like if we heard someone go and say that today, we'd be like, But
Yeah.
Is there anything in the Old Testament that says you can't call yourself that? I'm just wondering, is there a particular thing he went against? Or is it just they were so offended and, because, it's all the way up there. And I was just wondering.
Well, I think it's interesting because we go all the way to the end, and it says, "For if you believe Moses, you would believe me." So he waits till the very end of all this stuff. It's like the problem is you don't believe Moses, and I think that's what's burning in their hearts so much is they say we're people of the book, we're people of the Mosaic law, we're part of the covenant, we're sons of Abraham, we all this stuff that they're attaching to themselves. And when Yeshua shows up on the scene, he's like, in reality, though, 90% of what you're claiming isn't even true. 90% of what you believe, you aren't doing. 90% of what you read isn't your actual life. So if I come to you and tell you I'm the Son of God, I'm not lying to you, first of all. Second, even if you did read Moses, you would understand what I'm telling you is to be true. And you should have been
Mhm.
researching and understanding and knowing, like John the Baptist. Why did John know what was going on? Why did the other disciples who followed him immediately know what was going on? And yet the entirety of the church, the entirety of the synagogue, the entirety of everybody's like, nope, don't like it, denied. And he's like, but these guys got it, and these guys got it, that guy got it. So what's the big deal? Why are you fighting? And it's because it says that they didn't even believe Moses. The thing that they held so dear and put to such high esteem, the special scroll that they hide away behind the wall. They're like, yeah, listen to what they're reading, but don't do anything they're doing. So their faith without works, their works were, according to Yeshua, voodoo. So I think that's that hard part is he's trying to just give them real basic truths. Now, if somebody were to come into the world today and be like, if we all put ourselves in that scenario, oh yeah, it's gonna be hard to be like, oh yeah, I'm the son of God. You're like, sure you are. You're Jesus from Nazareth. Come on now, like look at you, look at me. We look the same. Let's not kid ourselves. But the fact that he's saying you should have known this stuff means that they didn't know what they thought they knew. They put themselves on level 10. In reality, he had to bring them down back to level 2. He's like, you don't actually know anything. You barely read the right stuff, much less even care who I am or care what I'm saying to you. I've quoted the scripture. I've done miracles already. I'm literally coming here. John has made straight the path, the dove, the testing. Bob, I got disciples. I've literally been preaching to you guys since I was a kid. He was in the temple as a child, literally teaching the rabbis like, hey, this is what's up. And they're still like, no, we're good.
So it's kind of the same today. People don't read Moses and know Moses.
Right.
They some question. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, hold on a second. Yeah, this is that's for everybody. Let me see my board real quick. This is he's spitting up.
Oh, he is. I'll get paper towel.
Oh, this is my grandson Samuel. We just for those of you that prayed for us this week, I appreciate it. We went up and got Caleb and Samuel and Amelia, and got them all moved down from Columbus, Indiana.
He's still the newest member of the family. Or
He's
is
still
anybody else?
he's still the newest one. Believe it or not, how old is he now? 4 months.
4 months this upcoming this upcoming Friday.
This upcoming Friday, he'll be 4 months old. He's a big boy. I'm gonna tell you that right now.
12-month clothes.
Yeah, he's 4 months old and 12-month clothes. So we don't make him small around here at all. But yes, he is the newest of the squishes.
What else we see in 5 is we're getting those truly statements again when 19 and in 25. I think it was in there one other time, but I remember reading and researching like why does Yeshua use the word truly like does he assume people aren't going to believe him? One, yes, that's why he's saying that. He's like, I know you're not going to believe me, so let me make sure I reiterate. But also, when you're writing and you're trying to, there's no punctuation, there's no bold letters or whatever. So in order to really make your point, there wasn't the little line in the dot, exclamation point. There wasn't giant bold letters. So there was like, to make sure you get this, I really want you to know. So we use that kind of today more jokingly, but that's how he would have said, I need you to get this. Truly, like for real, 100%. No more questions. So that was the way that he would kind of convey that message. And so to have it multiple times in here, truly, I say to you, the Son of Man can do nothing of his own accord. So when they're accusing him of doing anything, he's like, if I am the Son of Man, whether you agree or not, I can't do anything on my own accord. I'm only doing what the Father said. You believe in the Father, right? Well, I'm doing everything he said. Shouldn't you also be doing everything the Father says? So in reality, we have to be on the same page, but when we're on different pages, who's wrong, me or you? And I think that's what, that he's calling out their hypocrisy. He's putting the mirror in their face because he is the ultimate mirror of I'm perfect, you're not. So who's winning this conversation right now? He's like, me. So truly, I tell you, if I'm me, I'm doing what God told me to do.
Absolutely. Vicky, then Ryan.
That's a good one.
So going back to verse 9, at the beginning of it where it says, and at once the man was healed. That part, it is not stated that faith in Yeshua was required of the man, as was the case in many of Yeshua's miracles. The focus here is on Yeshua's power and his authority. And then from verse 17, on to the whole context, Yeshua debates the Jews regarding his relation to the Sabbath and to God. Yeshua does not argue with his opponents, about whether they understand the Sabbath legislation correctly. His interest is whether they understand who he is. Yeshua claims to be God by indicating some of his divine prerogatives and shows the basis for his claim.
Is that your commentary or is that some
That's my study.
it's in there? You wrote that in the
No,
Bible?
no, I didn't write it. It's in my-
Okay. I'm about to say, how did you write all that?
No, no, no.
Little tiny-
She would if she could. Go ahead, Ron.
I have, but, yeah.
all right, so in the section that Jonathan brought up, it seems to me that Jesus is saying that he is seeing the Father do human-like things in heaven. I'd say to you, the Son can do nothing of himself, but what he sees the Father do. For whatever he does, the Son also does in light. And we know what Jesus did on earth, right? So if he's doing what God is doing in heaven, like that's a totally different perspective on what God is doing.
Right.
That I've probably never really allowed to sink into my brain. It's always just this, I don't know what that concept.
Yeah, floaty God in a chair.
Yeah. But if God is literally like roaming around heaven, ministering to people, helping, just like Jesus did here on earth, I mean, that's just a different perspective. I never really quite thought about it like that. You know, he's like a king amongst his people who's actually out there doing stuff.
Mhm.
Yep.
What's that one verse or saying like the king is in the field? Isn't that like during the Sukkot time frame?
Yeah, that's during the trumpets going into
The time leading up.
yeah, the
Is
time
that a
leading up to
scripture
it.
verse or is that more like conceptual?
I think it's more conceptual.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't remember reading that verse. But
Yep. Shabbat shalom there, Miss Karen and Jeremy Pierce. Good to see you guys. And everybody else is online with us right now. Shabbat shalom.
So with that, the next truly again is in 25. I say to you, an hour is coming and is now here when the dead will hear the voice of the Son of God, and those who hear will live. So again, he's talking to them in all kind of. I'm sure he's just drumming on their foreheads. You know, they're hearing this stuff, but it's not going in. You know, it's like, what is he talking about? What do you mean dead people are going to hear and they're going to live? And you know, and he always goes back and re-explains himself of, you know, it's not about you just doing works just because that's on the list of things to do. It's one, you have to come to faith, and then your faith should produce works, but you don't just follow a bunch of arbitrary rules and hope that that's going to be good enough. And I think they're still stuck in that we have to do works, or we have to wait for some guy to show us a sign. You know, they're always asking him, show us a sign, show us a sign. He's like, I'm not going to keep doing this. I'm not a genie, you know, I'm not a traveling circus. Like, you know, I'm going to heal because of people's faith. I'm going to raise the dead because of, you know, to make God, the Father's name magnified. I'm going to do things when the Father allows me to. But other than that, I'm not just out here making, I didn't go to everybody's house and turn all their water into wine. I did that because my mom wanted me to, and I was respecting her. And, you know, there's a lot of times where I think the people were just trying to treat him like another. But I mean, yeah, prophet, but in a weird way, because yeah, they're still going to try to kill him like they did all the other prophets. You know, he even says, "What, are you going to kill me like you did all the rest of the prophets?" You know, so it's. I think he's trying to like stay out of that category at least long enough to get his message across. You know what I mean? He's like, I just want you guys to hear this. This is how much I love you. And then in 30, he goes on to say, I can do nothing on my own. As I hear, I judge, and my judgment is just. So he's even like, hey guys, I need you to understand. He's pretty much laying out his credentials. Like, here's my ID card. I'm from heaven. I'm God's son. I can't do anything on my own. So don't try to beat me up, because if you're beating me up, guess who you're actually fighting? And that's an awkward conversation. What are you doing? Trying to punch God? And they're like, well, if we kill you, and he's like, but if you kill me, then you're killing your desire for the Heavenly Father, because me and him are going to be doing the same stuff. So if you don't like me, that means you don't like him. That's going to put you in a real awkward position, because the people who don't like him are at enmity with him. They die and go to bad side of Sheol. So you guys sure you want to take that stance? You know, he's kind of always coaxing them in the right direction, and they are just running full speed the other way.
That whole section is kind of end time stuff, is it not? Like talking about how he has authority over judgment, the good deeds, the resurrection of life, and all that. And then Oh, yeah. Just love that scene. It's almost like you could feel his exasperation with everybody in this chapter and others, but it's like, how can you believe glory when you get glory from one another, but you don't believe me and you see everything?
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine how that must have been.
Well,
to
it can
him,
be
like,
very frustrating.
yeah, over and over and over.
He's like, so he's basically telling you within these few scriptures here, these few verses, is that he's like, look, there was one before me, is John, and everyone probably knows who John is. He's not a secret.
Right.
Matter of fact, we get the story of the Pharisees showing up out there while John's baptizing. And I'm sure they're showing up in the full garb and everything. Oh, by what authority do you do all this? No, we were sent here to find out what is happening here because we heard of all these people being baptized. Things are happening out here, and it wasn't brought to our attention, so we're bringing our attention to you.
Mhm.
So it's obvious you know who John is. It's obvious that you should more than likely understand the message that John's been preaching this whole time, unless you've really just completely just went like, I hear nothing. You got to be hearing John saying, hey, there's one who's coming before me. I'm not worthy to unloosen his sandals. All these things that John's been out there preaching from the wilderness, probably all the way back to Galil and Bethlehem and all that stuff. It's the same message that's been going out. This guy's been talking of me for a solid minute now. I am that guy. So I think this is where he's coming like, you guys are hearing, but you're not receiving. You're not. But what you'll do is you'll receive this other prominent guy over here, because I came from this side of Yeshua. If you go back and you look at Nazareth was not, there's nothing special about it. That's why we even have it written in here in one of the Gospels was, does anything good come out of Nazareth? Is there anything like you're from there, right? Yeah. I mean, come on, man. Nobody famous comes out of there. No scholars come out of there. No one who's picked to go study with the best rabbis come out of there.
Mhm.
Aren't you the son of the carpenter? But you speak as one as having authority. So at this point, this isn't completely new to them, this concept of a Messiah that's showing up. And then what he's saying is, hey, John's been out there forefront. He's the one who's been pushing us. I'm him. And because I say I'm him, now you want to kill me. I do good, whether it's the actual Sabbath or it's their Sabbath. I'm doing good on this, promoting life. And none of this I can do unless God sent me. This is why I'm witnessing. Not only am I witnessing to everyone else, the authority and power I'm walking in, but this is for you too. This is why Nicodemus shows up in John 3:16. He's like, hey, we know, Rabbi, me and my other boys that are we're keeping under wraps. We know that no one can do what you're doing unless God sent him to do it. So in this point here, he's just calling them out, man. He said, look, if this guy from this other place who's a prominent Pharisee or a rabbi, whoever shows up, you throw out the red carpet, you give him, all the accolades, you do everything for him. But when the actual Son of God is here and is doing good, now you want to take me out and you want to kill me and destroy me? This is why when it goes back to the very end of the chapter, when he's saying, he says in 44, it says, how are you able to believe when you are receiving esteem from one another, and that esteem is from only Elohim you do not seek? Let me read it again to make sure I read it right. And the esteem that is from the only Elohim you do not seek. So he's even telling him, you're not even seeking God's will.
Yeah.
You're not even seeking my Father. You're not even looking towards his face whatsoever. Do not think that I shall accuse you. Do not think that I shall accuse you to the Father. There is one who accuses you, Moshe, in whom you have set your expectation. For if you believe Moshe, you have believed me, since he wrote about me. I forgot which disciple it was, but at the very beginning when he's calling the boys out, hey, come follow me. And the one of the brothers goes to the other one and says, hey, come see the one. What did he say? The one that Moshe spoke about.
I think it was Andrew.
Was it Andrew?
Thing.
Yeah. If you guys know, let me know.
I had to put some shekels on it, I'd say. And
You put some shekels on it.
So
You're like, man, sorry, I'm all fresh out of shekels. But even the low class or middle class guys, the fishermen, he recognized, hey, there's something about you, and you're the one that Moshe spoke about. Come and see this guy. Right. So he says, in verse 46, for if you believed Moshe, you would have believed me, since he wrote about me. I'm the guy. I'm him, right? He says, but if you do not believe his writings, how shall you believe my words? So it's almost like it's all for nothing, really, with these guys. Like, you have all the evidence. You are the keepers of the scroll. There are those big giant scrolls in the temple and all the other scrolls and everything else is going on. You are the keepers of the words in all these temples and the synagogue. He's like, but yet you don't have eyes to perceive exactly who I am. That's the sad part. Everything he ever did, they would get upset and want to kill him. I'm like, so he's doing good, but you want to kill him. It's because your hearts are from him. This is where we talked about before, where he goes into the whole, he says, you're of your father, Satan. You're the synagogue of Satan. You're not of my heavenly Father. You are not, your intentions aren't towards what is proper and right. Your intentions are for, hey, what can I get out of this? Where's my prominence in where I live at? What about this beautiful garb? My ZCs are dried to ground. All of my shallow prayers in the street corners. You're all about that, but you're not truly about being about the Father's business. So. That's it. Sorry.
What you were going over and what's written in Scripture kind of reminds me of that Jesus didn't have to go through all that he did. He didn't have to accept the cup that was being poured out. He didn't have to go to the cross. He didn't have to do any of that. It was his choice.
Mm-hmm.
He chose to do it. You know, he had the prayer at the Garden of Gethsemane, where that's our proof. To me, that's my proof that he had an option. He could have gone a different way. He even prayed that there would be a different way. Right? And so him not having to choose that path, and then him giving this long speech to the Jewish people at the time.
Yeah.
Like, why say all of that if it wasn't going to have an impact or couldn't have an impact? Right? Why say all this stuff to them if they were just doomed to their fate? If they didn't have the chance or the opportunity to accept it?
I think some of them did.
Right.
Yeah.
And
The whole first church was converted Jews.
and part of me, I don't understand it, but part of me thinks that since Jesus did have a choice, that the cup, he didn't have to go that way. He could have chosen different or whatever it is. That there could have been a different outcome somehow, some way, where the people that he was sent to, the Jewish people, would have accepted him, and things somehow would have been different. I don't know if God would have been a different path or whatever. Because if Jesus had not gone the route and been crucified, then my understanding is that there wouldn't have been another. There wasn't going to be someone else sent. There wasn't going to be another son sent.
Mm-hmm.
So if Jesus had the choice, there could have been something different that happened. It could have been a different outcome. I think that's kind of proven through Scripture. There could have been a different outcome.
Mhm.
We got the best outcome, thank God for Jesus.
Yeah.
But if there could have been a different outcome, could the Jewish people have accepted him to such a degree that he now becomes their king and their high priest on earth at the time, and then like the trajectory of the world sort of plays out differently?
I would say interesting thought.
Yeah.
And we're in plausible land, but I would say for sure no. The reason why is because all the stuff was prophesied already to happen. There wasn't going to be a reduction or loss of the temple. There was going to be, he needed to become the high priest. So if they would have accepted him and they didn't crucify him and blah, 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 then regardless, he still was going to have to die. He was still going to have to resurrect. Like those things are those are mandatory. Now, in what manner, what fashion? Yeah, could he have lived an extra 10 years because the Jewish people didn't hate him? Yeah, probably. I don't see why that wouldn't have been possible. Could the whole scenario have played out slightly different? But I think the results would have been the same. All the actions that went down all had to stay the same. He still had to die, still has to resurrect, still had to have the sign of Jonah, all that kind of stuff. Did he have to die on a cross? Probably not. They could have hit him in the head, they could have speared him, whatever. But it was the fact that he was trying to fulfill all the scriptures with the prophets, because he's like, I'm going to fulfill every single thing in the prophets, from Isaiah 53 to the man on the cross or on the stake or on the tree, on the wood, whatever. So there was so much that he had to do that there wasn't a lot of wiggle room. But in theory land, yeah, he still, no matter what, he still would have had to die to become the high priest in heaven. anything on earth, if they would have fully accepted him, they changed their ways, they started doing temple better again, they found the ark, blah blah blah. All that still would have been secondary to him ascending to the high priest.
Yeah, because you have the promise of the new covenant.
Right. Or better covenant, yeah.
Right. Better covenant and mediator of a better covenant and these things. That one was past tense, but the pretense in the Old Testament definitely does. Yeah, it does lean to the outcome that happened. Pretty much had to be the outcome.
Right.
Otherwise, I don't know what the alternative would have been if he had not chosen to.
Well, let's look at it this way,
Die for
Ryan.
us.
The hearts of men haven't changed since then till now. You know, Christ goes to the grave, resurrects. Multiple people see him come back. You got dead people walking around Jerusalem that are coming out of their tombs during that time, and still their hearts were so hardened that they still. And I'm not saying that no one out of that group didn't, because again we have Joseph of Arimathea, we've got Nicodemus, and Nicodemus even says, "Me and the other guys." So there's multiple guys who are believing, but they're locked into a system that they're not going to. That goes their way of life. They could be imprisonment, loss of a job, loss of life, whatever that is, social status, but nothing's changed. Look how evil the world is today. So nothing was going to change. I think perfectly God's plan walked out the way it was supposed to. I do believe in my heart that was a year, a Jubilee year. So it was a year that the captives were set free by everything that happened with going to the cross and everything else, him becoming high priest. But again, God knows the hearts of men. And even here, he's kind of backing up saying, I'm here in the flesh and you don't even believe me.
Right.
And then remember we get to the story of Lazarus, the dead man. That was rich man Lazarus, right? That was it rich man Lazarus? Yeah. And the beggar that died. And he's like, hey, can you send me back so I can tell my brothers? He's like, hey, if they wouldn't believe the living, what's going to make them believe the dead coming back? You know what I'm saying?
You have an admirer.
Hey, boo boo. Yeah, you see Papa over
He
here.
was just staring at
He
you,
was
Oh,
smiling, he was
yeah.
smiling.
smiling.
Yeah, and like I said, I think the way that we know that was going to happen the way it did is, we get the information. You killed all the prophets before. You persecuted all the prophets before. What's the difference?
Mhm.
Jesus could have came. Gabriel, the angel, could have came. Whatever the messenger, they're like, get him out of here. Get the Ezekiel and Joel and all these guys, get them out of here. Kill them. Get them. Somehow we got to stop hearing this stuff. Don't make us feel convicted by the things we're doing wrong. I will tell. No one makes me bleed my own blood. The whole dodgeball team. They were like, get out of here with this. No one wants to hear that. And that's the sad part is they wanted glory from other men. They didn't want glory from God. They didn't want to have well done, good and faithful servant. They wanted well done, good and faithful brother of the flesh.
Right.
It's like I don't know. Your opinion doesn't matter that much. His opinion matters.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. Anything else, guys, on this?
The last one real quick was 39. You search the scriptures because you think that in them you have eternal life, and it is they that bear witness about me. So he's kind of giving them like every once in a while you see him kind of give them a little bit of a thumbs up. Like in this, you are doing good. You search the scriptures. Good job. Like I'm not telling you don't search the scriptures, but you think they'll just by searching them and reading them and understanding every Hebrew word and the 4 levels of Hebrew and the. He's like, if you think all that stuff is what's going to give you eternal life, it's not. That's the beginnings. That's the elementary part of it. That's the setup. But if you leave me out of the scenario, then great, you're the smartest Hebrew person in the world, but then you don't have Jesus. So you're still on the other side of the cross. You're still on the other side of Sheol. You're still on the other side of heaven. So cool, read it all you want. But if you leave me out of it, you're just a smart dummy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what he's really conveying to them. But we should still kind of admire their desire to search the scriptures because Paul tells us, study the scriptures to find yourself approved. But you can't leave Jesus out of it. And he's saying, you've left me out of it. So there's no eternal life without me. If you leave me out, cool. Way to be. You can learn Hebrew straight from an angel. And it's like, but if you don't believe in Jesus, then you lose.
Just at least in my head, it kind of backs up what you're saying. That the truth of God is in Scripture, super duper important. So I'm glad we have it. We're also told that the truth of God is in creation all around us. That doesn't get you saved just because you.
Yeah. You're right.
Yeah, I think to kind of button it up here, Ryan, with what you were asking earlier is what Yeshua says in verse 40 through 43. It says, but you do not desire to come to me in order to possess life. I do not receive esteem from men, But I know you, that you do not have the love of Elohim in you. I have come in my Father's name, and you do not receive me. If another comes in his own name, you would receive. So again, right there, it kind of tells us that they doesn't. To be honest with you, even if Yeshua would have set up shop and done what he was doing, next thing you know, you got now Rome. He's got a war with Rome. I mean, there's gonna be a lot of things. Which can Yeshua back it up? Can he send down that legion of angels that he was talking about? Later, yeah, he could come make a parking lot out of the whole thing and start over fresh and new. But that wasn't the purpose for what he was sent. Though he was sent for the purpose of the lost sheep of Israel and everyone else who would give heed to the word. So
He says it in a few different ways. But there, he said that if someone else was to come in their own name, he's telling them that y'all reject God in so many aspects, in so many different ways. Y'all reject God. He tells that to them in many different ways. You reject me, you reject God. Even if telling them that if someone was to come in their own name, they would accept that person. But
Right.
if someone comes in the name of God,
right,
you don't accept it.
Yeah.
So like he's telling them, y'all may study the scriptures and be all about the scriptures, but you reject God.
yeah.
Right.
And let's remember this too. So John the Immerser is part of the people of the way, and the people of the way are in direct conflict with Pharisees anyway. So there's a good chance that they're not even hearing this, because everything that they do and everything that the people of the way are doing are complete opposites. And keeping of God's ways, keeping of his feast days, his calendars, everything, there's always this constant. So for me, it's probably known that Yeshua is a part of that community. And so they're not even wanting to even give an ear to whatever is being said anyway. They're just kind of like, yeah, whatever. And then this guy shows up doing these things. It's like, and it's just, for them, it was more of an irritation that you're here, you're doing these things, you're going against our system, you're going against our customs, you're going against the way that we do life. And for them, they were so hardened of the heart, they didn't even care that he's physically doing healings right in front of you. People who are lepers, people who cripple, people who are blind, people who couldn't hear, those with demons. Hold on. You are so hardened of your heart, you can care less that that goes to show you where your heart was never for the people anyway. Because if it was, you'd be like, that's fantastic. I mean, what is this? You would want to be drawn to that, but instead you were like, oh, we don't want any of this. Just, go away. So.
All right, Kyle, you get the last word, and then we're moving over to 1 Samuel.
Yeah, Samuel's a
So,
shorty.
Just tacking on to what you guys were saying. I mean, Joe, you already said, they didn't have the love for the Father. But we also know that, if there's no love for truth, that then the Father's not going to grant wisdom or understanding or any of that. So, I mean, I don't care if they had all of Scripture memorized. It doesn't matter. Their eyes are going to be open to it because their minds aren't open to it. So they're not going to see the truth because that's not what they're looking for. And therefore, they're not going to have understanding. They're going to miss it. They're going to miss all the good because they despise the truth. They'd rather adhere to tradition.
Yep.
Yeah, good stuff. Inside that verse, we worship in spirit and in truth. You can't have one without the other, and the other without the one.
Yeah,
All right.
Abraham didn't have the scriptures, at least. I don't know what books he might have had. Abraham just had faith.
Not day one, at least.
No knowledge.
Oh,
He's starting out with no knowledge.
Right. Well, they're in Jubilees. We do have the chapter where he sits down with the angel of presence, and he actually gives him understanding of the ancient language and then of the writings of his forefathers. So he did get the he got the download.
So eventually he ended up with some
Yeah.
scriptural knowledge.
Oh, yeah.
Again, started with just.
But yeah, day one he was just a random dude. His daddy was Terah.
Yep.
Or Terah, how you say it.
He was a young lad
Yeah.
of 14 years old.
Not knowing diddly.
Nope. Except he did recognize, I know who you are, despite my dad and his idols and everything going around me. He did recognize the one true Elohim.
Spirit,
So
spirit.
when he was called, he listened.
Mhm.
All right, guys. 1 Samuel chapter 31. So we'll finish out this chapter, move into 2 Samuel next week. Yeah. So
Not
anyway,
even a full page in my Bible.
All right. Now the Philistines were fighting against Israel, and the men of Israel fled from before the Philistines and fell slain on Mount Gilboa. The Philistines overtook Saul and his sons, and the Philistines killed Jonathan and Abinadab and Malchishua, the sons of Saul. The battle went heavily against Saul, and the archers hit him, and he was badly wounded by the archers. And Saul said to his armor bearer, "Draw your sword and pierce me through with it, otherwise these uncircumcised will come and pierce me through and make sport of me." But his armor bearer would not, for he was greatly afraid. So Saul took his sword and fell on it. When his armor bearer saw that Saul was dead, he also fell on the sword and died with him. Thus Saul died with his 3 sons, his armor bearer, and all his men on that day together. When the men of Israel who were on the other side of the valley, with those who were beyond the Jordan, saw that the men of Israel had fled and that Saul and the sons were dead, they abandoned the cities and fled. Then the Philistines came and lived in them. It came about on the next day, when the Philistines came to strip the slain, that they found Saul and his 3 sons fallen on Mount Gilboa. They cut off his head and stripped off his weapons, and sent them throughout the land of the Philistines, to carry the good news to the house of their idols and to the people. They put his weapons in the temple of Ashtaroth, and they fastened his body to the wall of Bashan. Now when the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead heard what the Philistines had done to Saul, all the valiant men rose and walked all night, and took the body of Saul and the bodies of his sons from the wall of Bashan, and they came to Jabesh and burned them there. They took their bones and buried them under the tamarisk tree at Jabesh and fasted 7 days.
Mm.
A mighty fall.
Yes, fallen very far. I got the sword on this one apparently. I was out of here. Jonathan died.
Mm. But I wasn't the beloved of Yeshua, so you're good.
Your head wasn't cut.
That's also true. So, it's interesting because we're still dealing with Philistines, right? I mean, we know if we go back far enough, because we've been reading chronologically through from Genesis to Samuel, and we see where God was telling Joshua multiple times, go into the land, take the people out, go inhabit the land. If you do what I tell you, you're going to be good to go. If you don't do what I tell you, you're going to have problems. Well, they don't take out the Philistines. They don't take out this group. They don't even inhabit this part of the land. The other groups are afraid to go and take the land. 2.5 tribes stay outside of the Jordan. And so we're seeing the pains of their forefathers not doing their job. And I think sometimes when we look at scripture, we kind of say, oh, that's history. That was then. But how often is God saying, hey, Jonathan, hey, Caleb, hey, Carmen, go and do this? It's not for you, though. Like it's of no consequence to you. You just do what you're supposed to, but you don't realize generations down the road, people are going to have to deal with the junk that you left behind. And so if Joshua would have handled his business, if Moses would have handled his business, if this story wouldn't even be here. They would have been in the land winning. They would have been the great land flowing with milk and honey. All the giants would have been expelled. All the bad guys would have been out of here. And they would have been living in the land that God promised them, doing the feasts and festivals as required. But instead, they're still fighting Philistines. Now the Philistines are coming to attack. And David, for his story, he gets left behind in the army. Remember, they were like, oh, yeah, don't come with us. We don't want no Hebrew boys with us. We're all Philistines. Leaves them behind. His wives all get captured and all this stuff. So David's going through the struggle back home. And Saul's without a leader, without David. Jonathan's on the fence with them because he's like, well, I'm on David's side. I'm not on your side, Dad. And now you see kind of the fruition of all the story. Kind of, this is the crescendo moment. This is where everything piles up to this moment where Saul's like, you don't even hear about Saul. Like really, it says the battle pressed hard against Saul. You don't really hear Saul do anything. You just hear he got hit with an arrow. So what was he even doing in this battle? Was he actually out fighting? It's just a sad story to see. We could go back 27 chapters and just this story wouldn't even be here. It would have been. Well, Saul wouldn't have been king because they would have enjoyed keeping their priest and they wouldn't have clamored for a king. So, yeah, one thing leads to another, apparently.
Arrow to the knee.
Yeah, it says Robert Daniel says, how loyal you suppose Saul's men were. As soon as Saul fell, they scatter.
Yeah.
Well, I think too, some of that also is when your leader goes down, what are you going to do? And now you're without direction. You're without, like, okay, he was king and he's gone and his sons are gone. So I think too, I would probably want to get out of Dodge too, unless you're planning on leading the troops yourself. But
I think there was a lot of they respected the position, but I think they knew Saul was off his rocker.
Yeah.
So I think they were like, well, like David, you're not. I won't kill you because your God's anointed, but I'm not following you. I'm not gonna do anything you ask me to. I'm not gonna follow any of your orders. So I think a lot of the people were just there under like obligation or under coercion. If you don't follow me, I will try to spear you to the wall like I did my son and my son-in-law.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's like, if you're willing to kill your own family, you definitely gonna kill me. You know, so I think there was a little bit of that where people were, oh, he's out of here. Peace. Yes, Mr. Ryan.
Two things. One, to me, that is absolutely God allowing that disrespectful stuff to happen to Saul. They take his head, they take his body.
Mm.
Like the other leadership that we've seen throughout Israel up to that point, it seems like God protects them. Like no one's ever even knows where the bones of these people are. The patriarchy of like Abraham and his sons. So we almost know where the cave is, but those bodies seem to have been supernaturally protected by God. And you see what happens with Saul. It's almost like sort of like a punishment or humiliation that God allowed to happen. And then with the Jonathan, with the names Jonathan, Benadab, and Teshua, it's like you look up, the Hebrew for them, and they barely changed Abinadab and Melchishua, but yet they give you the English version of on a. They could have just why change that one, but not really change the other one.
Right.
Come on,
Yeah, I noticed it too. But I'm not mad. At least my name's in the Bible.
right?
Probably no one can say that other one. They're like, no, nah, we're good.
Now, with everything that happened, that little bit of grace here or honoring of who he was, I think when these men, says, and all the brave men arose and went all night and took the body of Saul and the bodies of his sons from the wall of Beth Shan, and they came to Yabesh and burned them there. And they took their bones and buried them under the tamarisk tree at Yabesh and fasted for 7 days. So, when it's funny when you said earlier where he was trying to pin his son to the wall, and you see what happened to him. He gets pinned to the wall, and yeah, that's okay. I know.
I gave it to you.
I know.
It was nice.
I know that was on the platter. I was like,
Don't mind if I do. Is that great?
I like that. But so anyway, but you see that there's that level of, all right, you're not going to be left here. On top of that, it's dishonoring to God because he still was God's anointed, just like David said. So it's dishonoring to God because it says that his armor was placed in basically a pagan place.
Right.
So they're like, oh, let's give our offering to our God. And it's like, hey, you know what? I know he messed up. He's my boy. He knew he was gonna die, but we're not letting this ride out. So I purposely think that God sent these men there in the cover of the night, these brave men, to retrieve the bodies, to bring them back, give them a proper burial, burn the bodies, and take the bones and bury them, and give it more of a properness to this. So that because God still isn't in favor of the Philistines at all, of course. So he's like, oh, Saul's going to die, but you're not going to get all this glory out of this and think you're going to parade his body and his head around and do all these different things. I'm going to make sure I get that back,
It was like that statue Dagon. Remember they took it into the temple and then it kept falling over. And it kept falling over. He said, oh, yeah, we're not doing this. I appreciate you for trying to bring the ark in here. And you thought you were going to do something, but no, we're not doing it.
Yeah.
So why burn the body?
It's a cleansing. There's no like typically you put them in a tomb and you wrap them and as the body decomposes, then you pull the bones out and you stack them and all that. In this situation here, we don't know how long they've been in this place pinned to the wall, so it's probably very nasty. And at this point, you got it's for the sake of disease and it's uncleanliness, so you're going to burn the bodies. Yeah.
So we talk often about Saul's spiritual maturity, his understanding of scriptures. It seems as though when he first started off, he was prophesying, he was doing right. The people were looking at him like big guy king, awesome guy, honorable guy. But what we kind of forget in this story is Saul's apparently one all over the place mentally, but also very quickly forgets words that were spoken directly to him. whenever he went to the witch and saw
Mhm.
Samuel, what did Samuel tell him was going to happen? You and your sons are going to die. End of the story. That's what's going to happen. Here he's like, oh, well, I don't want them to parade me around and make me look like a fool and the jester in front of all these other nations. No, dude, you're going to be dead. That's what Samuel told you. You will die. So it's interesting, too, that he decides to take his own life.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? You talk it. I don't know. I don't want to get into like the whole honor thing and what the scriptures say about it, but Samuel gave him a pretty clear cut definition.
Mhm.
That's what it is. A pretty clear definition of what was going to happen to him.
Cuts me deep.
And yet he's still looking over there scared, hiding in a corner. Oh, what do we do? They're going to kind of get me and they're going to parade me around. No, they're going to kill you. You're going to be dead. You and all these people that you are related to are going to be dead.
Mhm.
That's how the story goes. And yet, he's still sitting in the corner, like trying to figure out his exit plan, or like, well, I'll just kill myself. Then I don't have to deal with it anymore. Like, what? I don't know. Sometimes it just makes you wonder when you hear, like, I haven't gotten to talk to Samuel. No prophet ever came to me and be like, tomorrow, like with Eli and his sons, tomorrow, you and your sons are out here. It was just, okay. And he seemed like he was okay with it. Eli was just, all right.
Even in the end, he tried to control it.
That was exactly my point. And not listen to God. Even though it was from some weird witch calling up the dead people stuff, he's like, God still spoke to him through all that and was like, you're dumb. You know you're dumb, and now you're gonna die. I want to die.
I'll just kill myself.
Right.
Fight everything, yeah.
So these people in Jabesh, or however you say it, Jabesh, were these who were these people? They,
I have
they,
no
'cause they weren't
idea.
Philistines, but they didn't seem like they were like Hebrews. I mean, because there wasn't a common practice of the Hebrews to burn people and fast for 7 days. There's no Torah instruction to do that I know of, to burn people and fast for 7 days.
I have no idea.
So I was just
about
wondering, are these just like random local people that were like, man, even God was like, I'm going to use the nations to make sure that you don't disgrace one of my men, even though the Philistines are bad and they made their point. I'm still going to make sure we take you down, and we're gonna end this on a not positive note, but on a conclusion, not a ... at the end of the story.
Exactly.
Something I found says that it was a town, and the father of Shalom who usurped the throne of Israel on the death of Zechariah. Second Kings.
Hmm.
So
That's
maybe
later
that's
in the
something.
story, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that was just something. Well, yeah, I was gonna say led by the Spirit. But I don't know if the Holy Spirit was working like that back then.
Well, so he often uses the nations to exact judgment or to fix things or whatever. So he could easily just been like, even the people recognize, hey, this is too much. Like he was the king. Just put him in the ground. Like we don't have to parade him around and stuff and get a curse on him because he's hanging on a tree type of deal. Like let's not do that stuff.
The valiant man. Amen.
Oh, this says also the city, which this is first appeared in the story of how all the men and the married women were killed because no one from the town had come to the assembly at Mizpah.
Hmm.
And then
Yeah. So real quick. So it says.
Real quick, Jabesh Gilead is mentioned often in Judges chapter 2.
Yep, I got some information on it. It says Jabesh Gilead was an ancient Israelite city in the region of Gilead, of course, located in northwest Jordan, east of the Jordan River. The names Jabesh Gilead reflects the city's geographical location and the people who live there. Jabesh Gilead is mentioned several times in the Hebrew Bible, particularly in connection with King Saul's battles against the Amorites and the Philistines. Here are some notable events from the Bible that took place in Jabesh Gilead. It says in 1 Samuel 11, the Ammonite king Nahash attacks Jabesh Gilead. The men of Jabesh Gilead appeal to Saul the Benjamite for help. Saul rescues the city and praises the men of Jabesh Gilead for their valor and mercy. So that might be part of why they're doing what they're
that's the
doing.
one where they cover up their eye.
Right.
I saw that. Yeah.
It says
Samuel 11 or something.
1 Samuel 11. And it says the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead appear to have had close ties with the tribe of Benjamin. The men of Jabesh Gilead did not join the Israelite tribes expedition against Benjamin. So
Okay.
a little bit more context. That lends to, you know, I guess they were doing their part. Hey, you took care of us, and we're going to go in there and honor you and,
Right.
and take your body.
So
And
they weren't part of the tribes, but they were like sympathizers.
right.
Okay.
You know, it's also interesting that the armor bearer couldn't kill Saul, but he could kill himself too.
Yeah, it was a little weird scenario.
Yeah.
He's like, well, if he's dead, I might as well be dead too.
Well,
I
I guess
know.
like you said, if the king is gone, everybody abandoned ship.
Yeah.
It's still like.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Another thing about Saul's brain that I thought was interesting, what you were talking about, the armor bearer. Draw your sword and thrust me through with it, lest these uncircumcised come and thrust me through. And so it's interesting to see, like, he's in a fight, in a real battle with the Philistines. He's been fighting the Philistines forever. And Samuel already told him, it's your time to go.
Yep.
And he's worried about uncircumcised men. You know, it's like out of all this stuff, like now you want to pull the holy and mighty card out. You're like, oh, no. But these men are uncircumcised versus me being circumcised. No, I mean, I'm full of demons and a terrible person trying to kill my own family, but uncircumcised men, on the other hand, we can't have any of that. You know, so it kind of goes back to show that, you know, was Saul was struggling to keep his heart circumcised, you know, that which is the more important one. Yeah, the physical circumcision is part of the covenant, but he's like, is his heart circumcised? Is he staying holy, pure, and true to the Father? Well, clearly not. He's all over the place. So it's just interesting that, like, he wants to pull the Bible card out, you know, on his way out the door. No, not uncircumcised men. No. I'll die from a circumcised man, but not that guy.
He's uncovenanted.
Right.
Joe, I'm confused if you said that the people of Jabesh, who they make a covenant with, or forgot the last
Benjamin.
part. Benjamin?
I said he made a covenant, or did I say covenant?
No.
Made an agreement. Okay.
It says that, hold on. It says in here,
Chapter verse.
the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead appear to have had close ties with the tribe of Benjamin. So I think that's all it's saying, because it's saying that during the time that the Benjamites were attacked, you know, for what there's some stuff that was going down earlier we were reading, that they were not a part of that.
All right. So in 1 Samuel 11,
Mm-hmm.
verse it says, now Nahash the Ammonite
Yes.
came up and besieged Jabesh, and all the men of Jabesh said to Nahash, make a covenant with us and we will serve you. So the men of Jabesh made a covenant with Nahash the Ammonite. I don't know exactly what that means, but that was before. Yeah, that was the beginning of 1 Samuel. Well, midway 1 Samuel. And then at the end of 1 Samuel, those same men are the ones going and retrieving Saul's body.
Mm-hmm.
So, good, bad, indifferent. Doesn't seem like they
Yeah.
were.
I mean, it wasn't a bad thing they did that. I don't think so. I think they were returning a favor. It's like, hey, you took care of us again. Let's take care of you.
Well, just to make a covenant with someone from the Ammonites, right? Now you're in a covenant with that person. I don't know exactly what that
Right.
means, but
Okay. Ready to head over to Genesis? See, you already turned there.
Yeah,
All right, guys, let's head over. Good study so far. Let's head over to Genesis chapter 17 through 20.
And if you guys don't know already, we're doing again QC, questions and context. So if you have any questions, put them in the chat. Any context points coming from other books or other sources, or interesting points that you have to add,
Mm-hmm.
now is the time to do so. I will start off with, there was a reason I talked about circumcision with Saul, because it's going to come in here with Abraham. Abraham first now gets the opportunity to have circumcision as part of the sign of the covenant that God made with him. And it was a sign that was given to Abraham at 99 years old. And all the men that were with him also got to join in the covenant promise and to have the sign of the covenant on them. I don't know how else to say that. I know the one, Michael, what's the guy's name? Michael B., the Christian comedian, the black guy.
Oh, Michael David, or not Michael David.
It's not
Michael B. Jordan.
No, Michael. Well, that's an actor.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the guy's first name's Michael. But you know, he jokes about this scene here, and he says, I know he comes back to the people, and he's like, "All right, time for everybody to get circumcised." He's like, "Whoa, hold up! Can you go ask God again to make sure that that's what he said? You sure he didn't say your skin and not foreskin?" Because I don't know about this situation. But yeah, essentially, all the men here get circumcised, and they all get to join in the covenant that God made with Abraham.
Yeah, and in the very beginning of this is where we got the changing of the name.
Mm-hmm. What verse was that one?
I'm pretty sure it's in here.
Verse 5.
Yeah, 5. There it is. That no longer is your name called Abram, but your name shall be Abraham, because I shall make you a father of many nations. So, yeah, again, the father is just, I think, repeatedly telling him, hey, you're going to be the father of many nations. By the way, see as far as you can look to the left, to the right, this is all yours. And by the way, I'm going to show you how serious I am. You're going to get circumcised.
Either in or you're out.
Yeah, that's it, baby. But hey, Abraham, don't worry about it, because everybody's getting it.
Right. And then in verse 9 it says, you shall keep the covenant, you and your offspring after you, throughout their generations. Doesn't sound like there was an ending point to that, or a conclusion point, or a certain time in history there's no longer a need for said covenant.
You talking about faith earlier in 17, it said Abraham fell on his face and laughed and said in his heart, have that, but still, that had to be something getting that at 99, as you said.
Oh yeah.
Chapter 17, verse 13. He who is born in your house and he who is bought with your money must be circumcised. That to me is automatically throwing up at least the question mark. Not a red flag, but a question mark. Because it seems like the covenant is being enforced on people. Like, it didn't say ask them. It didn't say, teach them and get them to agree to the covenant. It said anyone born, anyone bought, you are to circumcise them. Almost as if it's forced. Now, maybe there's some context missing, right? But this sounds a bit different than what I would expect.
What would you expect?
That it would be a voluntary covenant rather than, okay, this man, I'm the slave guy. Man just bought me, gives me the bad news, right? Hey, this is what I got to do to you.
Right. Why is it bad news, though?
Well, if I don't know anything about this God, if I don't believe about this God,
Mm-hmm.
and then this thing has to happen to me, and I'm forced into this covenant, which it really isn't even a covenant. I'm not willingly participating in it anyways. Just seems odd. Just seems almost pagan-like stuff, versus
Well, you can see like for like a baby, for instance, we all, even just in circles that don't even understand what circumcision is, they do baby dedication, they pray over the baby. There's a lot of concept already built into the system. This baby I dedicate to God, or this baby, we're gonna raise him in the ways he should go, type of thing. Circumcision was just the sign and the proof that you and your family, because there was no, like today everybody makes their own choice and everybody does their own thing, blah blah blah. The kids are their own people, the women, the wives are their own people. It was like, no, it was, as for me in my house. In my house, it was everybody in my house. It wasn't, well, if everybody agrees or disagrees, like, this is what we're doing. Our family is going forward like this. There was no options or choices. And then when you're entering covenant, that was a choice. I don't think it was ever forced on anybody. When a slave would come in, that was them choosing, hey, I'll work for you 7 years, like with Jacob and Laban. And he says, okay, well, if you're going to work for me for 7 years, here's the conditions. And so that person could say no, but then you don't get the benefits of the labor, the money, the house, and all the stuff of being attached to the family. You just work for somebody else or go starve or whatever. So it wasn't ever, they weren't just running around circumcising people. Like, oh, you want to be here? Circumcised. Oh, you picked cotton in our field? Circumcised. Oh, you brought me water one day? Circumcised. It was a,
get over it.
Do you want to be in the covenant? Are you the city on the hill? Are you the light that all drawing all men to you? And if they come and they're willing to participate, just like the women, whenever they would go to war, the women would come in and they'd say, you would marry them, But if they didn't want to have nothing to do with it, you were supposed to let them go because they didn't want to be a part of the covenant. You can't force somebody to be in covenant. But the people here that are being circumcised want to be. They're choosing that lifestyle. That's why they're being. When we use the word slaves, it's not like they were on an auction block. It was, hey, I want to work for you. You've got good, and I need them. I'll work, so I'll be the slave. I'll be the bondservant type person.
Right.
And they're like, okay, well then you have to. We're doing Shabbats every Saturday. We're doing.
Right.
So this is how you get to be a part of this.
Mhm.
There could be, I think there obviously is context and nuance that's missing from that. You know, there probably were conversations that were had. It's not
Oh,
just as soon as you agree to be
Next.
my bondservant, it's like, yeah.
One of the things I would go on a limb and say this as well, with from Jubilees to Genesis, and you study out the character of Abraham, I don't think any of these people would have had an issue with it at all. I think that the way he led his life, the way that he took care of the people, that I think that this is one of those things where it's like, thank God I got that you bought me. Thank God that I'm brought into your fold. Because I had nothing other than that. I was literally about to die in the street or whatever their circumstances was. It talks about people being bought with the silver or whatever. It's like the difference being is we look at everything from the lens of America with slavery and what took place and everything at that time. But in these times, that's why later on in the Torah, they're giving in the Torah it says, hey, slaves be subject to your masters, but the masters also treat your slaves right. These people that are indentured to you, treat them with, there's a proper way of treating them. But I think with Abraham that he already was doing that. He was already, it was almost like, thank God. Again, I was like, I'm glad I'm with your camp. I'm glad that I'm with you. And we got to do this circumcised thing. And as we go along, so be it, because wherever you go, I want to go. And I think we see a picture of that is with our Heavenly Father. It's like, the saying that one day in your courts is better than 1,000 elsewhere. When we talk about the awl being put through the ear on the post of the porch of the Almighty, it's like, I would gladly put my ear up on the post that you put the awl through it to say that I am yours, you are mine, that all that stuff, I am committed to you. Thank God that I'm with you, and could have been anywhere else in the world. So I think for some of this, and again, at some point, you probably had, I don't think Abraham's enforcing or throwing down anyone's throat the Torah or anything else, but I think it's a matter of you're in this family now, and as a family, we're going to move as a unit and as one. And so when I read this, that's the way I look at it.
I know it doesn't say it, but what you brought up, where it does, at least in my heart or whatever, my understanding, that it would make sense that if someone wasn't going to agree to this, that he just wouldn't take them as a bondservant or a slave.
Right.
Abraham, I could get it. Doesn't say they had any conversations, but us knowing Abraham,
Yeah.
the scriptures, they probably would have had some type of conversation, giving them a heads up about what you're about to get into, what we do. And if they were not in agreement, then he just probably wouldn't have taken it as a slave or a bond.
Right.
And we see that all over. Like when you look at like some churches and stuff, membership, and you have to like agree to like the church doctrine statement or whatever. Do you agree that God is the one most high, that He has a Son who died on the cross and resurrected, and we're saved by His blood? They got
The creed.
the creed and the core beliefs. So we all kind of do that. When you join the military, you have to do your oath of office and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of stuff that we kind of forget that we do that in our world today. Now, very often we don't anymore because our world is very wishy-washy. But it used to be very much so that whatever you joined. It wasn't I'll do it for a little couple of days. Like even the careers, you used to work at like the plant until you didn't work no more. Now we change jobs every 10 minutes.
Yeah, and Country Dad Sergeant pulled this up earlier. So he has a question. So circumcision still required after you start following Yahweh or on the 8th day? So the 8th day is more of a biological thing, in my opinion, because when a child's born, within that, but by the 8th day, they create their own vitamin K for clotting. So I think some of that's common sense. Also, guys, like, hey, don't do it the very first day or the child could bleed to death. And then what's the purpose of all that?
Right.
Or so on the 8th day, we know that the body will produce vitamin K. Today, in the world we live in, a lot of times the hospital will give a vitamin K shot because they're going to do the circumcision within a day after the child's born.
Right.
They're not going to follow the principle. And the principle here is mainly, I think, a physical one where it's like, okay, God knows He created us. He knows. Hey, by the way, on the 8th day, that child has enough vitamin K in his body, or should. Yeah, and I guarantee you that mother's milk back then was better than anything else. You know, the way that they ate in their diet. So that child had an abundance of antibodies and vitamin K. You know, everything he needed or she needed. But he's getting circumcised, not the she. But so on the 8th, so on the 8th day, it's more of a physical thing. You know, as far as it being still required after you start following Yahweh, you know, for a lot of us, that question kind of goes in other directions too. Like living here again in America, in my generation, we were all circumcised at birth. It wasn't even a question, or it was just automatically done. The number two is the way that we circumcise versus the way they may have circumcised back then. So this may not have been the entire foreskin coming off. It may have been enough to signify that, hey, you were circumcised. So there's a lot of missing things within there of the actual circumcision. Should we still be circumcised today? I think circumcision is still a thing that is good to have. So my personal opinion, others may change on that.
The sign of the covenant that is circumcision. That's to Abraham. That's to his seed. Right? But then there's the sign of the covenant that's the Sabbath.
Mhm.
Are they two different covenants?
Yes.
Yes. That's what I thought. Okay. All right. You can have one without the other.
Well, there's so that leads into like Joe said, that's nuanced because there's no one without the other. There's one is all built into the same. Like you can't have the rainbow and then not have the Sabbath. Like the rainbow is still part of the covenant no matter what, or else you're gonna get flooded.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't have one without the other. If you remove one, then the rest will apply equally. But then why would you remove the one? It's all part of the same story. So I view the covenants like where like the old passed away, when now we're in the new covenant, all the other ones are done away with. Well, it's just clearly not true. Just the rainbow alone lets you know that the old ones aren't done away with. I see them as like chapters in a book. So there was the first chapter with Adam, then there was one with Noah, then it was one with Abraham, then it's the one, then it's the one, it's the one. So then we're getting additions to the story versus, okay, chapter 1's over, throw that book away. Okay, now chapter 2, now throw that book away. Now, it's more of a, this is how God started working with man, and this is how he's not changed, but this is how he's interacted with man throughout the centuries. So I don't think you could have one without the other, but they're also not the same. So they're the same in the fact that it's all one story, but they're different in the fact that they play a different role, and they're all expected and required. I don't think we ever get a verse where it says, now Sabbath is just trash canned, or now the rainbow's trash canned, or now put circumcision in the recycle bin, and save it for later. We never get that verse. We never get any concept of that.
The circumcision covenant with Abraham is tied to whoever Abraham's seed, and then that is tied to the promised land gift, right? Isn't that what the circumcision covenant is? It's tied to the land.
Yeah, I believe so.
That you will be part of that group that is promised this land.
No, this one is the covenant with the exceedingly fruitful, multiply, the big nation. This is the covenant of that. And so the way that I see it is, he's saying, Abraham, you're going to be a great nation. You're going to have tons and tons of generations and family. And so, like the song we sing as a kid, Father Abraham, and I am one of them, so are you. Because we're essentially saying we're all part of that same covenant. That little kid song is still telling us, even in 2024, I am one of them, and so are you. He's literally saying all of us are still part of this original story of him being exceedingly fruitful throughout his generations, and we're all part of that same covenant that's carried from that day forward, or else there wouldn't be saved people that understand about the words of the scriptures without that. And so that's just a sign that we are still in that same covenant. We still all play a part, because guess what? If, let's say, 2 generations, Isaac was like, no, I'm good. I'm not gonna have any kids. Jacob was like, one's good enough. Then would we be here? So they all had to take part of that covenant and say, I will also be exceedingly multiplied greatly. And the next one, I will, and then I will, and I will, and all the way through today. If any of us stop doing it, then who comes after us? Nobody. You know what I mean? So to make sure you fulfill that covenant, you do have to go and be multiplied, even if it's not of your own body. You can multiply through evangelism, right? So there, some people get caught up in like you have to have kids. Like it's not you have to. He says there's a blessing, just like there's a lot of blessings for other stuff, but we're supposed to multiply. we're supposed to be exceedingly great. And I think that's more what that circumcision is, the sign of that part of the covenant.
In my mind, I'm thinking, do we have some type of proof, other than what the scripture says there, that covenant just doesn't apply to you unless you receive the circumcision? Like that thing about the singing and we're, all seeds of Abraham type deal.
Mhm.
You can be sitting there singing that, believing it, but if for whatever reason you didn't receive that circumcision, then it literally does not apply.
Well,
But you
here's
just don't have the sign.
Right.
So the original circumcision was of the heart, and then the outward sign
Right.
was the physical.
Right, 'cause I'm not forgetting what Paul said.
Right.
Yeah,
I know,
so,
like, Bible doesn't conflict. It all works
because
together.
again,
You just gotta
living
think
here in
how it works
America, my generation, a bunch of generations, that was automatic. So does that make me covenant with Abraham? No. Does it make me covenant with God? No.
Right. You got people
Because-
sitting in the church of Satan right now that are circumcised.
Right. So I think again, it's all about the heart and where your heart is in serving the Father. So I think that's ultimately what it comes down to is where's this? Because again, with Paul, he's like, hey, they're like, oh, these guys here want to start following our ways and they need to be circumcised, and they start laying out the whole. Paul's like, whoa. First of all, let's get them to stop doing the stupid stuff first, then once they stop that and they start observing us and start doing things with us, let's see then if they're willing to go. Because if I just turn around and take this guy and circumcise him, but he's still going to the temple of Diana, he's still doing all these different things he's not supposed to do. His heart isn't, he's not with us.
It doesn't know good.
It doesn't know good. And then there's another point where Paul's actually guys saying, yeah, see these guys over here, the Gentiles who are circumcised or aren't circumcised, but their hearts are. They're following God with all their heart. You who are circumcised aren't following God at all.
So, I don't want to say this like it's true, but it seems like Paul is teaching the circumcision of the flesh doesn't benefit you.
No, I think
Because
he's
if you have the circumcision of the heart, that's what God's truly looking for.
right.
And then it's like the circumcision of the heart kind of like qualifies as a circumcision of the flesh.
There's still two separate things.
Right.
He's saying if you're just a random person that gets circumcised, that doesn't do anything.
Doesn't mean anything.
Like just like you could get the verse Philippians 4:13 tattooed on you. You can get a cross tattooed on you. You could do all the stuff that makes you look, feel, and act like a Christian or a believer. But it does nothing unless the heart change, unless you actually walk and live that way. And so that's all Paul's saying. He's just contrasting the point of like, so you're just willing to go circumcise everybody in line just because you think that's good enough? Well, if their heart's not in it, then what was the point? But then he's saying, but once if they do have the circumcision of the heart, yeah, then go ahead and do the physical act as well. Just like you could say, I'm a believer, but he says, but part of that is to do the Sabbath. Well, you could be a believer without doing the Sabbath, but then that would follow up with the action. That would follow up with the result.
I don't remember who it was or the book that it was written in, but we have an example of a grown person getting circumcised.
Abraham.
Right. Well, I mean, New Testament.
One of the disciples.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, he said.
So then we know.
Yes.
The expectation is still there.
Yes.
Yeah, the expectation's still there, but if you're
It doesn't need
bottom
to be-
line is though, if there's no need for you to do it at a ceremony,
Right.
if your heart's not in it to win it, then that doesn't bring you like where you need to go.
Right.
If you think that you can just cut your foreskin and you're like, hey, I'm good, I'm golden,
It's not your ticket into heaven.
it's not your golden ticket. So you definitely need to be a part of your heart. We can't force this on people who aren't ready to. We don't even know if they're ready to receive the good news yet or not. So we can't all of a sudden pull out, well, you got to do this, 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 and this. And Paul's like, hey, whoa, let's make sure that they're willing to go with this first before we take them the rest of the way.
I don't know that we can answer this, so it may just be a pointless question. But we walk it out, we do our thing, but we just never get the physical circumcision. What do we miss out? What are we not getting as part of the covenant?
All right, check this out. If I walk around like this, am I still married?
Yes.
Now, can you tell that I'm married?
Yes.
Now you know. That's the only difference. You either know or you are.
But with the agreement, the covenant with God Himself, though, it seems like there's something you get for doing it, and there's something you will not get if you don't do it. Okay. I don't know. I always thought it was tied to the land.
Mm.
So it's like, okay, if you didn't do the flesh circumcision, then you're just going to be part of God's people, resurrected by it and everything. You're just not going to get to live in that promised land.
Well, I think
For whatever.
part of it is we're just so removed from like this wasn't a question in their brains. Like from Abraham forward, nobody ever had a thought about it. It was 8 days. Like when you see Isaac getting born, like Ishmael's already born.
Mhm.
Too late. He was already past 8 days. When Isaac's born, 8 days later, he was circumcised. No questions. There was no debates, no nothing. There's no debates again until the New Testament when they're like, well, we got all these new Gentile people and they weren't circumcised on the 8th day. So what do we do about that? Because this is a new concept. If you were a believer, it just wasn't, this was never broached again. You don't see it in the 10 Commandments. You don't see it anywhere else because it's just like, well, duh. It's always been a duh moment. So we're just in that, we're in modernity where we're trying to figure out how do we do what the Bible says because no one's doing what the Bible says. And so when we're trying to reinstitute and bring back what the Bible actually says, it's awkward. We're like, well, do you have to? He's like, well, they did, and everybody after them did, and it was never a question. So why are we questioning? I think that's more of what we should be asking ourselves. Why is it a question? Why isn't it just do it? And the answer is yes, you should. And especially if you're two believing parents that are trying to raise your children in the ways they should go, the ways they should go is to follow scripture, which is circumcision on the 8th day. Now, again, to the problem in America, it's I didn't have a choice. I was a baby of no words or brain power yet, so stuff
Right.
happened, and
Right.
now I am who I am
The
today.
circumcision of the babies almost seems like it's a test of faith or a test of
For the
covenant
parents.
for the parents.
Exactly, 100%.
So
Mhm.
then once you're an adult and it's your decision at that point, then it's a test of faith for you yourself.
Right.
Mhm.
That's why that verse says, "Raise them the way they should go, and when they get old, they should not depart from it," because they've already got the sign, they've already got all the upbringing. So if they leave it, it's their choice. He's like, but you parents better do your job. You do everything right. You show them everything right. You take them to everything right. And if they decide to leave it, that's their choice. But
Right.
they can never go back and be like, Mom never took me to church. Dad never read me the Bible. I never heard this stuff. It's not my fault. It's not, there's no excuse. Mom and Dad did what they're supposed to do. You're done.
All right, so let's keep moving on a little bit here. So,
I could keep going for
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So we'll go into 18 now. This just gets into the story with we have the angels that are showing up and appearing, the messengers, as some Bibles will say, the messengers or the angels will show up. And we have the one part in 18 in verse 9 says, and they said to him, where is Sarah your wife? And he said, see, she's in the tent. And he said, I shall certainly return to you according to the time of life. And see, Sarah your wife is to have a son. And Sarah was listening in the tent door, which was behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old, well advanced in age. Sarah was past the way of a woman. And Sarah laughed within herself, saying, after I have grown old, shall I have pleasure, my master being old too? And Jehovah said to Abraham, why did Sarah laugh, saying, shall I truly have a child since I am old? Is any matter too hard for Yahuwah? At the appointed time, I am going to return to you, and according to the time of life, and Sarah is to have a son. But Sarah denied it, saying, I did not laugh, for she was afraid. Then he said, no, but you did laugh.
You might
So-
not laugh, but now you're lying.
Right. And it says, and the men rose up from there and looked towards Sodom, and Abraham went with them to send them away. So it's interesting because, and part of me, this is, my feeling on this is the reason why God waited till they were advanced in age is because you will know it is me.
And God gets the glory no matter what.
Right. Because if I took you to the modern day doctor, you think a 99-year-old woman today to the doctor and go, an angel showed up and told me next year I'll have a son. They'd be like, I don't know what you're smoking or what you're drinking, but there's no way. You're way, especially today's time, we don't live as long as Abraham lived to be 175. But you're like, there's no way that you're going to have a child next year. You're 99 years old. So I think God purposely sets the scenario for this going, you know what? And God already knew thousands of years later, people are going to be reading this story going, and God's like, I'm getting the glory. By the way, this is what's going to take place. I'm going to show you how mighty I am. Because again, fast forwarding through the seed of Abraham to the children in Israel, or children in Mitzrayim in Egypt, God says, I brought you out with a mighty hand. There was Pharaoh had you dead to rights. I'm the one who was blocking the way. I'm the one that separated the waters. I'm the one that did all these different things. And so you see that literally the mighty hand of God beginning with Abraham. And it's like, hey, I'm going to take something. Everyone else around you would look around and go, yeah, I'd laugh too. There's no way I'm having a kid. And all of a sudden, surprise, surprise. Here comes little baby, right? Yeah. That was perfect timing, Samuel. He goes, yeah. So, and then of course we get into the story. This is where the guys are going up ahead, and you know Abraham sees them off, and they're going to Sodom and Gomorrah to destroy it.
Mhm.
And so we get into that story, and where Abraham's, you know, he's kind of like he's bargaining with God. He's like, hey, you can find 50. Would you kill the righteous with the unrighteous? Of course not. We can find 50. But again, the story's kind of funny, not funny, but kind of funny to me in that Abraham in his mind's going, I think he's trying to think, okay, Lot has a wife. He's got some daughters. He's got maybe some of them are married. Maybe we got some son-in-laws here. So I think he literally takes it from 50 down to, man, that place is really wretched. I don't even know if we can find 50. Hey, and he brings it all the way down to, he said, the 10. Let's see what verse is that.
The last one.
Yep.
Second to last, what,
33.
32?
Oh, right before it. Sorry, 32.
Yeah, it says in 32, he says, and he said, let not Yahuwah be displeased. Don't get mad at me. Okay, I know I've been bargaining. I'm using my bargaining chips here. He says, but let me speak only this time. Suppose there were found 10. And he said, I will not destroy it for the sake of 10. Then Yahuwah went away as soon as he had ended speaking to Abraham, and Abraham returned to his place. So I think for Abraham, he was kind of like, okay, there's a chance.
Mhm.
But this isn't going to go. But can you imagine? Because when the fire starts raining down, I'm sure that's in eyesight of Abraham seeing all this take place.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I was wondering, we never hear him Lot again after this, do we?
Yep. He has the 2 kids with his daughters.
Well, I mean, but did
Later.
Abraham, like it says in what 28 that Abraham saw all the smoke and all, but did he ever get to see Lot? I wonder, or did he just believe in faith that another thing that God said he was going to take care of Lot and did, we don't get that. I would think that Can you imagine just looking out and seeing the smoke?
right.
That's a great faith too.
But I think an interesting point for me was that, I think Moses took a page out of Abraham's book and was like, when God's like, why don't you get rid of all of them? Just me and you will go on. Abraham and Moses is like, no, because what are the people going to say? If there's some righteous men here, let's figure this out. These are the people you brought out of Egypt. What is the world going to say? And then same thing here with Abraham. He's kind of like, hey, what are they going to say if you just blow everybody up? Like maybe there's some righteous dudes. Let's try to, for the sake of the righteous. So it kind of makes me wonder how often I don't do this is try to intercede on behalf of others. Like Abraham's like, dude, they're even without Lot, 50. That means he's caring more people than just Lot and his little little unit. He said even if there's 50 people, like Abraham would rather save people, and I think that's why we see Abraham being called a friend of God. He's like, your heart's like my heart. Like I really want to save these people. I would love for everybody to stop doing what they're doing, convert, fix their ways. That would be awesome, but they're not. And Abraham's like, but what if they do? And God's like, yeah, but I know they're not. And Abraham's like, but what if they do? And God's like, that's how I think about people. Even up to the point of having to send my son to the cross, is like, there's still a chance. There's still a guy who's gonna hear the message. There's still a guy who's gonna try. There's still. And I think Abraham and God are like on the same page when the story happens. He's like, because God's like, you're not gonna change my mind. I was like, I'm not gonna do something that wasn't in my will to begin with. But the fact that you're trying to save people, I like that about you, because that's what I'm gonna do. All right, we'll see. You can find 10. We'll work something out.
Yeah.
You couldn't find 10.
Right. And in Country Dad says, so Lot was the only righteous person there. Ish. Well, I mean, his 2 daughters did come out with him, but that's.
Yeah.
But yeah.
How righteous was he though?
Right.
Try to give the daughters up, and then so he's like, "Here, you sleep with them. No. Now I'm gonna sleep with them. Somebody's sleeping with these daughters." My goodness.
Yeah.
Come on, Lot.
Well, I think with the whole thing with the door, I think it does. I'm pretty sure it doesn't say it. But if I was to think what they were thinking, they just saw their whole entire known world get destroyed. So in their minds, they were probably doing what they thought was right.
Like Noah.
Yeah, right. They're like, hey, we just watched everyone we've ever known. Mom is a pillar of salt over there, and everybody else is destroyed.
Yeah, let's take matters in their own hands.
The state matters, yeah, literally. So it's like,
there was an anybody else left on earth after that. Either.
Right.
And we
Cool.
just talked about that circumcision covenant with Abraham about fruitful,
Mhm.
being fruitful.
Yeah.
So if they had that in their mind, they were like, well, our duty is to make people.
See, the problem with Lot, I'll go into 19 real quick,
Good
is that it says in Lot, this is after the two messengers had spoke to him about what was about to take place. In verse 14 says, and Lot went out and spoke to his sons-in-law, who had married his daughters, and said, get up and get out of this place, for Yahuwah is going to destroy the city. But to his son-in-laws, he seemed to be as one joking.
It
And
says had married. Mine says who were married. Interesting.
Yeah, mine says
who had
were-
married.
who were to
Yeah,
marry.
mine said who were. Yeah.
That is actually that is interesting.
Yeah,
because
mine
if they were
says
already-
two words to marry.
If they were already married, that'd have made that conversation even more awkward.
But it makes you wonder, though,
Yeah, we're
is he have more than two daughters, though? These are older daughters. They're already married. And the two younger that came out with him
Yeah.
were not married. So it says, when morning dawned, the messengers urged Lot to hurry, saying, get up, take your wife and your two daughters who are here, lest you be consumed in the punishment of the city. Yeah, so there's two for sure. I think we don't know how many. It's just it said sons-in-laws. So we don't know how many daughters he had total,
Is that
I
right? It was
guess.
8. So that'd have been Lot and his wife, the two daughters, and then the two sons. So yeah, it should be 8 total. Right?
Well, if you take the 1, 2, all right, let's say we got 4 daughters,
Oh, if you have 4,
and then you got,
has to be less than 2.
Look,
right. But what I'm saying is, what if the 10 was, it says sons-in-laws, what if including them with the other daughters made 10? 'Cause that's what I'm thinking, that Abraham has enough knowledge to know that he has this many daughters. So I think in his mind, he's going, okay, there's got to be at least 10 of them by now. Because other than that, why not say if there was 5?
Mhm.
Have you find 5 righteous? I mean, it still wouldn't have worked.
right.
But I think there's a reason why Abraham picks 10 is because I think he already knew, that he had other daughters and they were probably the marrying age. And if they were married, he's thinking their family. I don't know. We don't know.
How about this miracle? How in a city so debased and evil did they remain virgins at all?
Yeah.
Well, and it wasn't just a city; it was a valley. It was like what 5 cities or something odd.
Yeah.
We just hear Sodom and Gomorrah, but there was like more down that valley. They all got destroyed.
Yeah.
So I always grew up just thinking it was just 2. I was like, oh, this one and that one. Okay.
But I mean, they remained.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And then Country Dad put in here real quick. He says, Robert Dane says righteous-ish. But it says, he's got Genesis 19:1. It says the 2 angels came to Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom, where Lot saw them. Country Dad says Lot was literally riding the fence. Ha ha ha. And then he says in 2 Peter 2:7, it says, and if he rescued righteous Lot, greatly distressed by the sensual conduct of the wicked. So yeah.
That's I was gonna bring up the 2 angels, right, coming in, and Lot sees them. Then they say they're going to spend the night outside.
Yeah.
And okay, so I don't know if this was like some type of test for Lot. Like if he wouldn't have been hospitable, he wouldn't have offered them to come into this house. Was Lot going to die then on that day with everybody else? Because it's like I just don't understand why the angels would say something that they're going to do this, and then he would be like, "Oh no, angels, don't do what you said. Do what I'm saying." And if that was just a test for him to see if he was going to have the heart, then I'd be hospitable, possibly do the right thing.
Mhm.
Even though someone who is people who are greater than him, angels who are greater than him, have already said what they were going to do. I don't know that I would have that thought process to then be like, no, angels, don't do what you said to do. Do what I'm saying. I just
Right.
don't think I'd have that thought process.
Well, him being righteous, he already knew what was going to take place if these 2 men stayed out in the court. He already knew that the hearts of these men were wicked and what they were about to do. So, and in part of their culture, was the hospitality. That's why when the messengers show up, he's like, hey, go kill the fattened calf. Let me make a meal for you. And, it was part of being hospitable. And also because, your feet dirty, let me wash you. Let's clean your feet. Let's do all these different things. And so he said, look, my masters, please turn to your servant's house and spend the night, wash your feet and rise early and go your way. And they said, no, but let us spend the night in the open square.
Mhm.
So, but he urged them strongly, and they turned to him and came into his house, and he made them a feast and baked unleavened bread, and they ate. So it's making me wonder too, right there. Maybe somebody's brought this up in the past of the fact that they're baking unleavened bread. Could be significant to the Passover time, or it could be because of the urgency of
Yeah,
getting
the haste
it done
time, yeah.
time wise. It could be, getting it. Hey, let me make this for you really fast.
I don't know if that level of hospitality would be part of culture, especially not Sodom and Gomorrah.
No, but he grew up with Abraham.
Right.
So that whole family would have been the culture. Because you see that same thing right before we see it with him, we see it with Abraham when the messenger show up.
Yeah.
He's
Right.
taking, so Lot's trained in that same way of thinking.
So they were Samson's parents.
Yeah.
As soon as the angel showed up, and get us some stuff. Go get all the stuff.
Yep.
I mean, again, maybe I don't know, kind of. Maybe there is no point. I'm always looking for.
That's your dad says, so Lot was righteous. I am. This is what the scripture's saying. I'm gonna go with it. Whether or not he's righteous in our eyes, but then if somebody look at our lives and go, you call yourself righteous? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
We could all be judges of each other and of what is righteous and not, but
I'm thinking, what was what's the alternative? Well, how does this story go if the angels sleep outside like they were planning?
well, first of all,
Yeah,
they're messengers, and if those dudes kind of mess with them, they would took care of business.
Yeah.
Everyone does.
Yeah.
Like the story with Balaam and Balak, he's like, oh, did you know there was an angel right there? He was going to kill you.
Yep. we already-
All he was doing was standing there. He was like, I'm here to block you. That's all I'm here to do. If you stop, we're good.
Yeah.
If you keep going, I'm going to kill you.
You got it, right.
Yeah,
So I
your
think it was
head's
like one of
coming.
those.
Yeah, your head's coming off his shoulders.
Oh, to be an angel.
It's interesting in 27 or 37 were called Moab, and you get root from that and
Mhm.
redeemed from that.
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier in my house about Ammon and the Ammonites and the Moabites, how they were cursed all these generations, but yet God's like, the things that those people do is what makes you cursed, not the people themselves. The humans at any moment, for any reason, could say, I believe in the God,
Mhm.
Father, the Most High. I'm going to change my ways to his ways. Then you're no longer a Moabite. You're an Israelite. You're an adopted son. You're grafted in. You're sojourner. You're all those good words. If you're going to continue to be a Moabite and do Moabite stuff, well, then you continue to get the curse. And so I think so often we look at it and say, that group's cursed. Every person that ever comes from that line's cursed. And the scriptures clearly don't tell us that. So good point.
Final thoughts.
Final thoughts. Then we get the situation with Abraham and the Abimelech, excuse me, in chapter 20. But I think we've
Yeah, I was wondering about that. 'Cause I didn't look it up, but whoever Gerar is, he believed the king. He must believe because he had that dream, and the Lord came to him. So
I don't necessarily like when I read that. Sometimes, I mean, you can think that, and maybe he was, but I also believe that God can show up in such a mighty way in someone's dream where it's like you have that God moment, or what we call today that Jesus moment, where it's like, by the way, that woman you have, she's married, and you need to give her back. And it could be one of those where because it's such a powerful vision from God, he's like, whoa, okay. This was not a normal dream. This was as if I'm speaking to someone, and I need to do what, I need to do what's right here.
well, this story is always just interesting to me, especially with Sarah and Abraham. They're like mega old, and God's like, open the womb because I do what I want. But then now he's saying with these people, remember that part where I said I do what I want? Oh, close all their wombs. And then now they're all going to have issues because that's what I said. And then we get to the end, and it says, then they also healed the wife and the female slave so that they could bear children again. So it's just amazing to me that God's like, don't think that you ever have more control than I give you. You know, in our world today and the things we vote on, if you guys know what I'm talking about, we think we have control over all these deals. And he's like, you don't. I'm tolerating you humans for a while until I don't anymore. You know, seek me while I still can be found. There's a day when he's like, no longer going to tolerate the sins. When the cups of sin, the cups of iniquity is full, then it's going to be wrath after that. And I just pray that we all look at the scriptures soberly and say, if I'm filling up the cup, I should stop doing that, first of all. And second, if I'm going to maintain that posture of life, then I will be on the losing end of God's wrath. And nobody wants to be on the losing end of that, as in Sodom and Gomorrah and the flood. And the list goes on.
Makes me think of the tumors. Remember, they all got the tumors, and then you had the one with the battle. Was it Aaron that came out there with it, or one of them came out with the incense and stopped everything?
Mm-hmm.
But also, I was thinking, how beautiful Sarah must have been to be 199, and yet still other people want her. Like he wanted to marry her. You know, or is she 90 or whatever? However old she is before
I don't think she was ever. I don't think she ever got to 190.
No, 90.
90. Okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, and you know, kings want her. Like that says something.
Yeah, we're clearly losing DNA and losing what humans used to be. You know, we used to be able to live 200, 150 and die good and happy. Now we read the Testament of the patriarchs. They're like, they stretched their legs out, called it a day, went on down to Sheol and meet with
Body
their
just
fathers.
shut down.
Like, I'll see you guys later.
And rusting away.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm gonna go into Sheol. Time's different.
And I'm not 100% sure on this, so don't hold me to it. But I don't think this is in chronological order. This part of the story that's inserted. I don't think that this is her at 90 years old. I think this is a story that's inserted in here, but this is something that happened earlier in. I'm not 100% sure on that. If anybody online knows, if you've done any study on that, but I don't. It's kind of interesting that this would be stuck because Abraham at this point is already wealthy. He's already made covenant. He's already done all these different things. So for him and Sarah to be just traveling and then end up in this situation again, I mean, for goodness sake, him and 318 of his guys just went and took care of business, you know, a few stories up. You know, so I think that this is not in chronological order here. The story is inserted here is something that took place earlier, and why it's in this part here, I don't know exactly why. Other than this was something else that needed to be covered in showing that this happened again. Now, Abraham was blessed from this, was giving things, and it says, it's interesting. He says to Sarah, he said in verse 16, he says to Sarah, he said, see, I have given your brother 1,000 pieces of silver. See, it is to you a covering of eyes before all who are with you and before all others, and you are cleared before everyone. And Abraham prayed to Elohim, and Elohim healed Abimelech and his wife and his female servant, so that they bore children. For Jehovah had closed up all the wombs of the house of Abimelech because of Sarah, Abraham's wife. So I think the story is not in, I don't think it's in the chronological order, especially right after Sodom and Gomorrah gets destroyed.
Yeah.
Why are you traveling? Where are you going? You know.
The New Testament about her beauty there too. And
Oh.
the second time we've read that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Well, and just to your point, if it was not in chronological order, beginning of 21, then the Lord visited Sarah, and then she was able to have a baby. Then
Right.
she conceived. So it could be literally like, hey, by the way, I shut them down and I turned her the ability on.
Right.
And so it's literally showing like the duality, like
Mhm.
I'm in control. So
Right.
if he's gonna put that story in, I could have left her womb closed.
Yep.
I closed them on purpose. People who could have kids, I told them no.
Yeah.
So I can darn near open it back up. And so
Right.
I think maybe that's what that,
That's in there for.
Yeah.
Because he was showing that God is sovereign. God's like, I'm the one that opens the wombs and blesses. And by the way, I'm going to insert the story in here that happened earlier, but it's going to be to reemphasize the fact that I'm the one that opens and closes the wombs. So when Abraham prayed for them, their wombs are open where they could all have kids. And by the way, now Sarah, your womb is open and you will, bear a child. So yeah, good stuff. Bam.
I don't want to cheat and go to 21, but I did.
All right.
Is that time?
That time, guys.
So he says food.
Yep.
Get ready for the message.
No,
Knew we had-
appreciate it, Shamgar.
Knew we have t-shirts made.
And
I like being branded.
Shamgar gives Hebrews 12:15 says, "See to that no one falls short of the grace of God, and that no bitter root grows up to cause trouble and defile many." Amen. All right, guys, we appreciate it. Thank you for joining us for our Bible study. I enjoyed it as always. Don't forget Jonathan, the Blessed One, the Immerser, the beloved of our Messiah, will be speaking later. So
All of them.
we'll just give you all accolades, man. We'll just pile it
Son
on.
of a king.
That's it. So he will be speaking here soon, giving me a little bit of a break on Shabbat after moving my son and his family down from upstate, or not upstate. I'm sorry,
Country.
from very up north. So Columbus, Indiana. So anyway, much needed break on that. So blessings to everyone. Hope to see everybody here just a little bit. So shalom to everyone. Blessings.
Hello. Bye.